Good evening, everyone, and welcome to Global Partners Caribbean Mission TT. And you are with myself, Lonesome, Arlene, and Time today. And we are just on the heads of having the conversation and continuing the conversation of the Child Protection Series Part 2. And with that being said, before we continue any further, let's just open in a word of prayer. And with that being said, so, Heavenly Father, we just thank you. We thank you for your Holy Spirit. We thank you for your anointing. We ask you, God, that in this session tonight, that your Holy Spirit will take complete control. That as we would look at let the youth speak, I pray, oh God, that you would give us the wisdom, the knowledge, and the understanding of how this mammoth exercise impacting the children, the youth, the child protection series, and the implementation policy would be helped in our homes, in our schools, in our churches, and our nations at large. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen. Amen. So, ladies and gentlemen, it's just a pleasure to be with you all this evening. And throughout the week, we had a lot of powerful messages that spoke to the word. And during the week, and I just want to share with you as we continue. During the week, we had Reverend Bridges talking about living beyond fear. And when we were talking about living beyond fear, he talked about Psalms, a powerful Psalms that we usually know. And I thought it was really nice that as we go into the different series, he talks about living beyond fear. And I thought that was really powerful that, as he talked about Psalms 27, living beyond fear. Remember, this child protection thing is a real situation that sometimes children are living in fear, and they're living in that type of abuse, and they're a bit scared. And tonight, I want to read for you Psalms 27, and I'm reading it from the Passion Translation, right, guys? So follow with me, and it says, Yahweh is my revelation and my light, and my source of my salvation. I fear no one. I will never turn back and run from you, Yahweh. You surround and protect me. The evil one comes to destroy me, but they will be the ones who won't turn back. My heart will not fear. Even if an army arises to attack, I will not be shaken. And even as we will continue discussing part 2 of the child protection series, this is something really powerful, that my heart will not fear even armies rise against me. Children in these situations could be fearful, and they have so many challenges, and as if the verse went on to say, I will not be shaken even if I'm in imminent war. Here's the one thing I've craved from Yahweh, the one thing I seek above all else, that I want to live with him every moment in his house, beholding his marvelous beauty of Yahweh, filled with awe, delight in his glory and grace. And despite whatever situation persons may be going through, that's a real good thing to see, that I want to live every moment in the beauty of beholding the marvelous beauty of Yahweh, and I will be delighting in his glory and his grace. In the day of trouble, he will treasure me in the shelter under the covers of his tent. He would lift me high upon a rock, out of the reach of all. And as we would have continued discussing about this series, they talked about, how the Lord is able to lift them high. The Lord will be able to keep them, and that they'll be able to triumph in, their situation, and that they continue to, this fashion translation said, I heard your voice in my heart, and it says, come seek my face, my inner being. And I responded, Yahweh, I'm seeing your face with all my heart. So don't turn away from me, for you are the God of my salvation. How can you reject your servant in anger? You have been my only hope, so don't forsake me now when I need you. And definitely when we look at sometimes these situations these children are in, Jesus is their only hope. So as we start the stage for this evening's little discussion with you all who are joining me, definitely we know when we listened this week, Pastor Butchers would have, gone through Psalms 27 and analyze it and apply the word of God in different situations about living beyond fear. And I find it was quite timely because at the end of the week when we were chatting with Let the Men Speak, we were doing a little review of it and the child protection series, definitely God is their only hope. And in this week, as week 2, Reverend Ryan came and blessed us, and he chatted about the church and the power of the church and the rule of the church, and how where the church is at now, especially in a pandemic, and where we're going to be. And it's very important that I always hear this statement, if the church don't evangelize, we will fossilize. And in that statement, we knowing that we want to keep preaching the gospel. And just like we have been here every night from since the get-go of the pandemic, I many times I've listened on the platform, and many persons will make jokes about the different ministers who have came the first night and the second night, just preaching and teaching about the word. We really see what the Lord has done, and we could definitely look at our mission and say, look what the Lord has done, and it is marvelous in his eyes. And definitely Reverend Ryan expounded about the power of the church and the church. And then Pastor Bridges went on later on in the week to talk about how to have a healthy church and what a healthy church represents. And then yesterday we delved into the child protection series. So definitely we want to get into that conversation today. It was quite a meaty conversation, guys. I will try to do a summary and a good analysis. I know you all would have looked on, but we want to remember that we are bringing it from a youth perspective this evening, and we're having that conversation from a youth perspective. And just to give you a background, you remember, when they were speaking about in the heels coming up in the wings very soon, there is a new book being launched. The new book being launched about child protection series, but definitely the implementation of child protection. But there was a first book that named Protecting Our Children, the Law and Policies, Procedures of Child Protection in the Caribbean. And in that book, I just want to give you an overview and just the content, because I don't want to take for granted that everyone knew what we are speaking about. And yesterday we saw a merge of a Caribbean and a global conversation on this topic. And it is being said, and you would say, but child protection, why child protection? And as we'll get into the conversation tonight, I'll be having a nice conversation with you all. As we get into the conversation tonight, we'll see how important it is, and some comments were made yesterday on that panel. And I want to echo the sentiments of those comments in the panel. That was really powerful, and it really needs to set the future, and it needs to set the pathway for a number of us, right? So, child maltreatment really is really a global and a public health problem with serious lifelong consequences. And I really think that our society today, because we see a lot of outbursts in so many different areas, we need research, not probably, but research has shown that, child abuse was one of the foundation factors, or some of the factors that persons would have experienced. And because of that type of abuse, it's seen it manifesting itself in different areas of their life, and in the society we can see it today. And apart from that, what we could realize is that while we have this conversation about a global child protection series and a local child protection series and a Caribbean child protection series, all one just wanting people to decide and to understand, hey, this is important and we need to move to implementation. While the conversation is there, while we are talking about it, while we are able to say, yes, we need it, we need to move towards the implementation. And Sister Margaret Bridges would have Dr. Margaret Bridges would have responded timely. And the conversation yesterday went to start to speak about the different challenges. But before we go into that, it also says that it knows no boundaries. It's cutting across race, religion, and culture. Child protection, that abuse diversifies in different cultures, in different backgrounds, in different races and different religions. And while we're on this platform and while we're in a Christian platform speaking about it, it happens in many other religions. And one of the conversations we have is what about this child protection series, or we the evangelical church, or we the Wesleyan church being the vehicle to populate this content throughout the nations, throughout the Caribbean, throughout places for people to understand, to sound the alarm that child protection is important and that's saying about it, but we need to implement it. And even in our local context here in Trinidad and Tobago, according to Reverend Bridges' books, in the year 2000, the government of Trinidad and Tobago introduced a package of child protection legislation to address the growing situation of child maltreatment in our country. And definitely, we all know of someone who know of someone who know of someone who child or children have experienced abuse. We all know of someone, or who we think of someone, and wonder that person in that home experiencing some sort of abuse. And we even know of adults in their challenging years, in their different years, that they burst out, and because of the abuse in childhood and because it was being so silenced, they now having a different outburst of who they are and what impact it had in their life. So this child protection series, children series, or this policy part 2, or the implementation of this new book that is in the wings, is not just for say, well, oh yeah, it's another book, but it's a book to carry this vehicle to the future. It's a book to answer some of our problems in our society. It is a book that would help persons come to the realization that no more we can sweep this under our carpet if we need to have a change in our society. And what we have been seeing is that the Sexual Package Act, including Act 31 in 2000, is saying that they amended it, and they talk about the Sexual Offense Act, and including the duty to report a sexual abuse. And that's the real big thing. In Trinidad, we real like gossip. We real like bacchanal. We could go and tell the neighbor of the neighbor, I think, I know, I feel she getting abuse, but we do not go to the relevant authorities to say, you know what? This person is undergoing this type of experience, and I believe that we should intervene. And not you yourself, but you, the person, of going to the right authorities, right platforms. And we know about the Children's Authority. And in the conversation yesterday, yes, let's get into the conversation. One of the things when we were talking about this child protection thing, and youths per se who may have known about it, said, no, I don't want to go tell anybody about anything for my name to be calling, and I causing any confusion, or I mashing up anybody's family lives, because sometimes there are persons in the home know of it happening and they sweep it under the rug, and they know of it happening, and because that person who is the abuser is the one who is financially helping the family tends to live with the situation. Many times we hear that story, and one of the things that we have seen in the recent future is that it allows you to report an act. It allows you to report a situation and remain anonymous. No jokey anonymous. It allows you to send in the information. May it be the child on the Child Protect Children's Authority Act platform. You're able to send in your response or your information via text or email and not to be traced back to you. And even though when we're looking at it and they would say, but these are children and this is a offense and this is of the law, and is it that I don't want to put these children in a court? And it allows for children to just giving their testimonials or giving their evidence via written or on audio, or if they need to have a court appearance, they don't need to be in a room. But before we get all to that point, in the conversation yesterday, or they were having, you're talking about the newness of this thing. Which church have you ever been to in Trinidad and Tobago? Ask yourself. Or have you known of that have a child protection policy? Mostly none. We don't have it. And even though if we look at the Caribbean, and when we were having that Caribbean global conversation, some of them don't. And in recent times or in the near future, yes, we're going to start that conversation that churches are getting on the bandwagon to get a child protection policy up and running. And some persons will say, but a child protection policy, why I need it? And we were talking about it happens in the church. How many times you hear the priests or the this one or the leader or the deacon or whoever it is, or a leader in the church abuse the child? And it's only when we hear the big scandal that we tend to want to pay attention. And I feel that we do not need to treat the result of the problem, but we really need to go to the root cause. And one of the things is that, do we have the right policies in place to understand what is required of churches of selecting a person in ministry? And firstly, they were talking about is a new thing, and because it's a new thing, would implementing a child protection series be frowned upon, or would it be welcome? And one of the ladies that was speaking, I think, I don't want to mispronounce her name, but she was saying that anything that is new, you would have some challenges. And I think it's Reverend Gibson, and she was making mention, and this panelist yesterday concluded Reverend Camelbash and Reverend Gibson and Reverend Bridges. They're both Reverend Bridges, Dr. Bridges as well, and Reverend Brown. And they were talking about how this policy was able to provide policies and procedures for children protocol. And because it's being first time introduced, we would have some challenges. But I believe that we can break the border or break the boundaries of being first time and show that show the positives and the impact that having this policy and having this book would help. And when we are talking about moving from the challenges or moving away from the challenges of getting it done, the law is why it is a right thing for us to begin to have it more rapidly engaging in churches. And we should take into account to be our brother's keeper. And if we want to be our brother's keeper, I believe that having a child protection policy in our churches will help us. But the conversation straight away then, and they said, but do we invest in our children? What we usually invest in the main church, right? And then they went on to speak about children's ministry. And I believe that's a real big point for me here. Because most times in ministry, we have a lot of adult ministry. We have a lot of emphasis on the praise and worship and while I am not bashing and I'm not saying it's bad, I'm saying that we need to secure our future and we need to invest in our future. And while it is that all of us would not live until eternity and great and be here to carry it on. We need to leave a powerful legacy, and we need to invest in the lives of the children. And when we speak about let the youth speak in this case, what are we doing with our children? Are we leaving them to the random, like, well, okay, they come to church and you all huddle up in the back there and you go to Sunday school? And one of the conversations I was having is that, Sunday school usually is the first entry point for many leaders or many persons that they allow in ministry. Sunday school, oh, you could help children, you could help teach children. Yes, you come to Sunday school, you teach. And we are saying here that, probably that in this case, who so somebody come to church, oh yes, I love Jesus, they could sing, they could clap, they looking engaging, this person teaching Sunday school. And then when that happens now, along the line later on, you hear a couple of things happening and you're uncertain, but you say, no, Johnny save and leader Jim save and leader John save. So because leader Jim and leader John save, that means it's right to get them into ministry, and they just go. And one of the things from my personal experience, they were talking and they were saying, but while you need to identify people to the call of ministry, usually the first interest is Sunday school. But is it that you just pick up John and Sister John, leader John and leader John, or whoever, and you just put them into Sunday school? And I remembered, for me personally, in my former church, you had to fill out an application form for ministry. And this is after you were baptized. So, some level of training and teaching went through there. And that was our next big point last night, training and teaching. But I'll go there just now. So a level of training and teaching happened, and you signed up an application for ministry. After that application was vetted and it went through, then you have to speak to the director of ministries. Then she's going to ask you what you feel called to, and all the different demographics. To me, I went through that interview. So now in today's landscape, when we just take in somebody, oh yeah, Sister John could sing, you go sing for the Sunday school, and Sister John and Brother John could sing, or Leader John could sing, and you send him the Sunday school. No, we having an issue there, because we do not know the background of these people. And what the conversation was saying is that while the church is thirsty for helpers and thirsty for persons to do ministry and work, we need to be very avid. And we need to be very mindful of who we are placing our persons with. And in contrast, just have them coming on and just saying, well, yeah, you come on. But are we invested in our children's ministry as we would like? And then if you just send them and come on, okay, yeah, we need help, because you always need help in children's ministry, right? People who in ministry and do Sunday school, no, you always need an extra pair of hands in children's ministry. So we are subjectable to that. We open, you get us at our open point or area that you could easily slip in. And these people and I'm not saying that every person that comes up to say they want to join children's ministry or ministry that they are like that, but what we are saying for this child protection policy and implementation, you need to pass through the proper protocol, you need to be vetted, full stop. And I feel like we didn't do that for a couple of, because we just want people to join the ministry. And because you need to be vetted and to join the ministry, and especially when they discussed about children's ministry and the importance of that. And I think when they were discussing it later on in the discussion, one of the persons on the panel says, we children are not a side dish, they are the main dish. And because they are the main dish, we see the main dish over the years. And if we look at just the basic statistics that Trinidad and Tobago created that law in 2000, 20 years later, 21 years later, were we really implementing that policy, or was that policy there on paper? And while it was probably implemented, was fully activated for all situations, for all cases, the children between that 21-year span, and while we were having a global Caribbean conversation. Is it every person in Barbados, based on their law and child protection policy, went through and was vetted and they come to met the consequences? Was everybody in Trinidad who committed that act of maltreatment against that child, did they go through, or would they be able to fall for their consequences? Would they charge? Did law catch up with them? Anybody know? And most times, no, we don't. A person will literally go by years after years after years and nothing was done because no one spoke out. And that's a two-part thing. One, we need to speak out and we need to really report it, and yes, it will be anonymously. And then the second part is we need not just to have people, random people in our children's spaces that we are not vetted, because we are making them open to these different challenges. And because children's ministry is so powerful, we realize that when we invest in our children's ministry, and we see that it is very important, when we invest in them, we can have the church continue growing. And one of the panelists was saying, because of the pandemic, and this pandemic now is another key or another unit that changed the game of this child protection policy. And I want to go to this point before I go to our next. The person was saying that this child protection policy, because we're in a pandemic, they're allowed to teach their children via Sunday school online the pros and cons of persons, and the importance of online, and how to keep themselves, and what they should look for and what they shouldn't look for, and they need to speak up. And you ever consider that some of these situations mostly were flagged by interaction at school or at churches with persons being able to recognize the signs and symptoms of children being abused? But in our situation now, in our context now, we don't have anyone to really view these children or to see them having these challenges, because they are home. They are in a pandemic. No one is to view. No one is seeing them. No one is knowing. Probably a neighbor could suspect. Even someone very close to me said, my nieces and nephew, several times I've been calling and they don't want us to speak to them, because children speak, and they will talk about who locked them up and who touched them where, because children are very open. And when you see children are sheltered and they don't want to speak, and it minds you. I know they are very introverted children, I'm not saying no, but it's very mindful to look at in our system now of what is happening. And as we see that, the home, nobody is being able to check on them. And because we're a church, we need to know, we know the children in our mission. We're not saying that children, it's happening in our mission, but in the churches across the board, we know our children, and we need to look out for them in this time of the pandemic, and touch base and to find out, hey, everything is okay, and be so strategic in the way to get a response from the children, to know what is happening, and to invest in their lives, and having them know what is child protection and the importance of speaking out or what is happening. And to the leaders, and this statement was said plenty, everything rise and fall upon leadership. And they were speaking to the leaders of churches to allow or to have child protection happening in their different areas, or to allow child protection to be able to be a part of the church, be a part of the policy. And even a comment came across in that discussion that, hey, probably we're going to reach into an era, is the church that has a child protection policy, is the church that will be selected for my family and I to serve at, for my family and I to attend, because I know this church is paying attention to when I normally have senior church or junior church, and you send your children off to Sunday school, that when they are of the Sunday school, they are being protected. Because sometimes, and you know the little slangs we usually say, and the unguarded moments, the moments where the moments where you are not looking, probably your home is a safe space, probably where you have your children is a safe space, and you carry them to another place. And for example, because we are speaking in a church context, you carry them in church, or you carry them somewhere, and something happens to them terribly, god forbid. And the conversation was saying that, we need to have a safe physical place for children. They need to have security, amongst all other things about the different implementation. They were saying a safe physical place for safety and security. And they were looking at the layout and the setup of churches. Now, we did not start or build or create churches with that in mind. And another thing that happened is that, who is looking after these children? Oh yeah, you just get up in a whole group, and all the boys and girls using the same toilets, and you're not sure what is happening or who is going with them in the washroom. And that conversation is very important to have. And when we teach our children what is right and what is wrong, and what is acceptable and not acceptable, we able to stop it at one point. But apart from stopping it at that level of the child, it is important to start it again. When this was said, leadership, everything rises and falls upon leadership. This needs to happen at a leadership perspective, and being able to implement this policy at a church level for persons to know, hey, this is what we stand for, this is what we believe, and this is what we will be supporting in this community congregation. And when that was being said, a number of times the word training came up, and the limitations to training, they were saying, well, we had long ago, right? You had to look at cost factors of one person, or the shortage of persons training a large group, hopping planes of here, there, and everywhere. And they understood, or they embraced the conversation of COVID-19. The pandemic have opened up a door for us to be able to bridge that gap of training, and where persons could now move on, or jump that border of saying, I don't need a plane ticket to access this training. I don't need to go to another country to sit in, but I can use a platform. And they were speaking about being able to train a number of persons on platforms that is open to the content. So while the shortfall or challenge at some point in time will have been accessibility to training, we are seeing now, because in our contemporary era, in our local context, in a global context now, we can use different platforms to be able to disseminate the information, to teach, to train, to get people on board. And that's the thing. We need to have people aware. I believe if we are not aware and knowing of our situation, and knowing what is required, and knowing how to train and train others, we won't be able to continue or continually successfully plan out. And when we talk about Sunday school, we have a big gap. We just talk about Sunday school, and when we jump to the adults, what about our teens? What about our preteens? While we many times would say, no, the content may be too much for them, or the content may be a bit over their heads. The content could be manipulated in such a way that it could be taught to teens and taught to young adults, so we can see succession in this. Because just training, and most times the leaders or the heads are the older adults, we can see that when we embrace the younger youth, or the youth in these types of training, we can see replication, we can see succession, we can see it happening over the years. But when we just, okay, I just train the leader, and it stays with the leader, and it's not replicated or reproduced, we are not able to continue this conversation. We are not able to keep the child protection policy alive, because it will just die with the leader, or some people might continue it at some point. We have to get buy-in, and that's our next what I was talking about, right? You need to get buy-in, or a genuine, and not just buy-in, because oh gosh, I don't want anybody to be abused again. I don't want anybody to fall prey to it again. But we're talking about genuine buy-in, genuine ability to be able to know, hey, this needs to stop here, and for it to stop here, we need to be well trained, and we need to be well taught, and we need to know what to look for, and we need to look for the criterias, and based on this policy, or based on this new book that is going to release in a few days, a few weeks, we can know what we are about. And when we talk about that, the conversation went on to different strategies for growth and development. And when we talk about strategies for the child protection policies and the implementation, not just knowing the policy, but the implementation of it, we need to speak to the youth. There is no succession or no success. While it is great to teach leaders, we need to teach youth. We need to teach the young adults. We need to teach that group of persons in the middle, 18 to 35, 16 to 35, 17 to 35, 15 to 35, because if we look at the statistics, abuse is happening as small as a baby to even the old elderly adult. So for it to continue, for us to have that continuous buying, that continuous understanding of being able to know, hey, this is important, and we need it to continue. We need to understand it. We need it to be able to be a part of our everyday life. And by it being a part of our everyday life, we are reducing the statistics of child abuse across the board, internationally, and locally. We need to teach the youth. And when we're teaching the youth, and the conversation was, how do we screen? How do we acknowledge that this person is a good person to be a part of this, or be a part of ministry, or to teach the youth, or to teach young people? The conversation came up as well, and they were analyzing the background or the character of someone who may have been ill, breached the law at some point in time, someone who have let's say breached the law. They got themselves caught up into the negative elements of the law and society, and now they get saved. Now they were able to come into the fold, to understand who was Christ. And a big debate came up on that, of saying, hey, this person committed this kind of act. I don't think that this person should be teaching Sunday school. Whereas our next rebuttal was saying that we don't want to forget the church and the redemptive blood of Jesus Christ. But we need to take two aspects, or two sides of that conversation, with a pinch of salt, and saying that in understanding the necessity of this child protection policy and implementing it, we need, the reason why we are doing it is because we want to safeguard our children, and we want to know that whatever environment, apart from home, and you are not watching them, or you are not supervising them, and they are being supervised by individuals, these individuals meet or require perspective of a high caliber. Question yourself, if you know a particular individual was reprimanded, served time in prison for sexual acts. He recently made the sexual offenders list. He received Jesus Christ, renewed, was sanctified. You want him watching your children? Come on, man. You really want that person watching? And I'm not saying no, that person can't, but that person needs to be supervised by a number of other persons at that given particular time. If we want to talk about redeemed by the blood of the Lamb, we are saying yes to that. And we are saying God is able to do that transformation. But we're not going to have that person alone with a group of children. That person needs to be always in a group. That person needs to be always in not alone carrying Johnny to the bathroom, and that was his or her temptation, to carry Johnny to the bathroom and supervise. Yes, we are embracing, and yes, maturity can come And yes, we can say that God redeems and God burns out and God washes away, but you also need to use wisdom. And that was another conversation that was said. While we are saying the redemptive blood of the Lamb, hey, we don't want to have somebody who having a multiple background on some kind of list alone with your son or your daughter. And while you would use wisdom to have that person there and to train and to teach, the power of that person there could really help your ministry. It could help your ministry both ways. It could show the power of your policy and your protection implementation policy of, hey, I could have a person with a colorful character with that kind of background still serving in my Sunday school and are able to carry it out because of my policy is showing that John not needs to be in the same place alone with 10 children, one children. John always in a group, and John is always supported by a male or a female. And may it be a John or may it be a Jane. I'm not gender specific here. Jane having issues, Jane not need to be with the children alone. Jane need to be always in the group. And the children needs to be able to speak out when they think that, hey, I believe that I was in a situation, because sometimes, let's be wise, what if it's a group? What if that's, when we talk about spirit and we want to go down that conversation, that same spirit, Jane or John Han trying to catch on with everybody and everybody trying to no. And I guess one of the things is continual training. And while they were speaking about training and speaking about it could be on a different platform, times are changing. So what is relevant and up to date and is now with terms of the policy, and in terms, the law is the law won't change, the repercussions of the law would change, but the different strategies and methodologies may change. So for example, the different methods that we may be using today in a physical setting may not be the same strategies we are using next 5 years or next 3 years in that same physical setting. Because one of the things that the policy is speaking to about safety, security, and technology, and why we're expressing and we are experiencing safety, security, and technology, what about you are trying to create a safe space for the children for Sunday school online. You create security and you create technology, whatever. You have a hacker being able to code and to lure your children in Sunday school. So while you put in a nice video of a particular link, that hacker is there as well. We're talking about safety, security, and technology in the implementation of child protection, right? What if you have a hacker in your same Sunday school and their link open to everybody to come? Because one of the persons was saying that in because of the pandemic, their Sunday school have grown because it is online. And what if a hacker comes in next 2 years into your Sunday school? And what is our response to that? And while our policy may speak to the physical characteristics and physical things that we need to do, our policy would also need to embrace different things as coding and those different elements of cybersecurity. And what platform are you opening up your Sunday school to have your kids on? And how are you securing your kids on that platform and allowing children to know that if you see user X comes up, you're not allowed to talk to only Auntie 1, Auntie 2, Auntie 3, and anybody else giving you instructions other than Auntie 1 or Uncle 1 or whoever 3, then don't give them that kind of information. Don't answer. Don't be lured. Don't be going around. You could be lured into a cyber room by yourself and giving out information, your camera on and things like that. We want to talk about being able to be relevant in an ever-changing time. And a family, as correct as a person said, a family would not take that risk. And likewise, many we are in this pandemic and everybody trying to go back to what was, but we will never go back to what was. When we are talking about structure, we really need to know what is going forward, and definitely being able to know where we are and where we are going and what we need to do. And definitely, when we talk about let the youth speak, a real investment need to take place into that youth demographic for us to see repetition, for us to see it happening in the different areas of society. And many times the conversation went this way as well. Trinidad and Tobago and Jamaica has some stringent laws in terms of this child protection series, and many times we focus on the victims, or we focus on the person, the abuser, and not on the victims. And I feel that we continually need to have a balance, and I think that the church system and the church makeup need to allow that openness for someone to come in and say that they're experiencing some kind of trauma or abuse, because it have been so tabooed and it's still tabooed. One of the things church need to get buy-in for young people to be able to speak out, because many times we have been seeing statistics and the backlash of persons who have not spoken out of their situation. And I believe they were making mention to an example that happened in one of their seminars, that after the presentation and child protection series was presented, a woman shouted out she was abused. And it's so important that we continue to pay attention to what is happening and the persons that is speaking out in different situations. And I thought it was very nice to probably look, and we saw different case studies along the way, and we saw make believe ones, we saw real one, but I saw this one, and this person, and I was talking about just speaking out in terms of the victim's perspective. And after the person, and this is an old article, I didn't want to pull any recent article because I don't know how it may impact any persons, and I wanted to be very mindful. This is a very touchy topic, so this is a very old article, about 10 years or so older. It's or more than that, about 15 years, but the person decided to speak out. And just as before we wrap up, the power of speaking out, I just want to zero in on that. While we have the different policies to implement, and we have the openness in the implementation, we really need to have that buy-in for persons to be able to speak out. May it be the older adult, may it be the middle-aged adult, may it be the younger adult, or may it be the child. They need to speak out. And this person wrote, I speak out about my sexual abuse, offers still suffer in silence. And this is years after she was abused. She said, even though I gave evidence in court against my dad, and this person was not abused just by anyone, this person was abused by their dad. And I was wanting to bring the conversation home to say, what if it is just a family member in your own home you're being abused by? And the person is saying, even though I gave evidence in court, I was sexually abused by my dad. And I know the abuse started when I was 12, but she told the police, I told a social worker, then nurse who examined me to see if I was physically scarred. And I told them in the courtroom via video link. I told you like that before. And after, I didn't tell anyone for a while. So it was silently reported. She went to court, she went through the whole thing. But after that, because remember it was anonymous, she said, I don't remember speaking a lot during my adolescence. So this happened before her adolescence. Maybe I did, but I do remember what was making me conscious of my decision to stop speaking about my abuse and how it was making me feel, because everyone around me was very uncomfortable when I did talk about it and when I'm speaking about it. And I lost an entire side of my family the most at some point in time. And she's saying, Yes, you're telling me, and this is the conversation here now. Yes, you're telling me report it. Yes, you're telling me speak out. But then when I do, you're shunning me. Then when I do speak out, you're indirectly watching my sideline. When I do speak out, half the family detach themselves away from the person because they are saying, well, she caused John or Jane or whoever to be reprimanded and they are now facing time. And many times people do not speak out because of the impact of family or the persons around them. So I'm encouraging persons to speak out. And this was a London case study. And this case study was saying that this report showed that the Children's Commission for England saying that the institution for child sexual abuse, two-thirds were carried out by family and close friends and family, and 85% goes unreported. And while this is an international statistic, the local statistic is not far behind or even worse. And the thing about it, there is therapy in speaking out. The lifeline for survivors of sexual abuse, we need to speak out. And the main thing is to allow a safe space, may it be the home, may it be the church, may it be the school, may it be other environments that children frequently visit, that they have the ability to speak out. And when we were chatting about that Psalms 27, and I read the Passion Translation before, it really goes to show that some situation, the Lord is the only one that He's able to take them through their situation, because some children may not know the Lord. Some family members may not know the Lord, and they may be wondering, well, what is going on? How I'm going to get through this. And we really, really, really need to make a positive impact locally and internationally and definitely globally. And the conversation have started. The conversation started long time ago, and we talk enough, and now we definitely in the season of implementation. And on the heels of Dr. Margaret, uh, Dr. Dr. Margaret Burgess is going to launch her book in time. She would do all that all those endorsements. But I'm saying that that book, as we stop the talk and we embrace it, we are going to implement. And as we open that implementation stage, we definitely, the first verse of that psalm says, the Lord is my light. It will definitely be a light. That book will be a light in the darkness of all these different situations, and be able to multiply and grow and start and pay attention to children, pay attention to young teens, pay attention to the young adults. And likewise, that person on the panel say that children are not a side dish, but they are the main dish. Because if we want to see society change, I mean, there are a number of factors that affect society and the way they are, but this is one of it. Abuse, child maltreatment is a source of so many different dysfunctional families in society. And one of the reasons probably they didn't know who to turn to. And we have the Child Protection, Children's Authority in Trinidad and Tobago. We have our police. We always have these different units. And definitely you have the church. The church be able to be there with you all, to be able to stand up with you all, to be able to understand. So just wrapping up, real thing I say, but just wrapping up this conversation tonight is understanding the challenges of being first. And when we understand this challenge of being first, we know that we could overcome, because it's a necessity of child protection, and for churches and institutions to grasp and to come on board of understanding that this conversation needs to move into implementation and the implementation stage. Apart from that, we get to see the model of churches now embracing the implementation and asking the question, is it safe to send my child at institution X or institution Y because they have an implementation policy, a child protection policy? Is it that I know when I am in church, that they are in a Sunday school or junior church, will they be taken care of the right way? We understood by the conversation yesterday and today, we are saying that while we are invested into the adult church, we need to invest into Sunday school. And while Sunday school is usually the key trigger for persons to jump on board to start ministry, they're not just jumping in just like that. We really need to vet, we really need to go through specific criteria, because one of the persons was saying usually some persons that come along in the ministry, they have the various educational background, and because they save, we tell them come on board and teach Sunday school or teach the kindergarten the school has. And we are saying yes, we still want to use you, because you know we're going to sing this song, if you could use anything, Lord, you could use me. We're going to say that, yes, still we want you to come on board. But when you come on board, you definitely have to have a check and balances. We need to know who you are and where you came from. And definitely if you had a past, all of us have a past. And if you have a past with the law, and especially with child protection, with child abuse, and so we definitely want to help you out of it, and we'll definitely put strong leaders and members and persons around you to safeguard your reputation and the church's reputation, because you don't want to be unduly blamed because you had a past, and any issue now happens, they blame you, and really probably it's not you. So because of that, we want to shelter and guard and have the right mechanism in place to be able to help you along and understand that yes, we're going to embrace you still in ministry, that we be able to always strategically plan for the future. If it's for the safety and security and technologies, we'll be able to have the right plan in place to implement it. Definitely background checks, definitely protection, definitely understanding the future. We are focusing not just on the abuser but the victims, and really and truly multiplying the growth of the church when we pay attention to children. And that was a whole big mouthful, but we continue to see the implementation of this policy, and we continue to see the years ahead that we see changes in our society internationally and locally. So it was such a pleasure chatting with you this evening and sharing this platform and chat and chat and chat. And I pray that as we continue to examine the implementation policy, that it make an impact in the lives of our people. And I am saying to you all that you can pre-order. I know this information is still the same, I will believe so. So you can pre-order. You probably can get a sneak peek of the sneak peek. Definitely sometime around this month, they mentioned that this is going to be a launch to the church in Trinidad and Tobago, the implementation. And again, if you want to be the first one to get your hands on a wonderful book to apply to your institution, to your church, we say contact us at the numbers shown on the screen, 6459452 and 6888166. And this was our first book that Dr. Margaret Burgess wrote, the book on protecting our children and the law. That's the first book, is already published, and another book will be on the wing. So I'm saying if you want to pre-order, you can. So you can have that book in your hands. And definitely, ladies and gentlemen, we do encourage you to be observant, to speak out, to encourage persons to speak out, and definitely youths, let the youth speak. You do have an awesome evening. Be safe and continue to put God first in your situations. I encourage you tomorrow, reminder that our church will be online tomorrow. We will not be in our physical location, but we'll be online at 9:30 a.m. from tomorrow, the 14th of November. We'll be online at 9:30 a.m. I encourage you to share the link, share the live, invite a friend, invite a loved one to church. They don't have to dress up. They could tell you, don't have no excuse to give you that they don't have anything to wear. Tell them just log in and they will be blessed. So I encourage you to share the link for tomorrow morning session at 9:30 and our evening session as well, being blessed at 8 p.m. So do have a lovely evening to our mission family and all our Facebook and YouTube viewers. God bless you and do have a good night.
Jesus told us to go and make disciples of all nations, baptizing them in the name of the Father, Son and Holy Spirit, and teach them to obey my commands. For I am with you always. Our primary goals are to evangelize nations of the earth, disciple new believers, plant churches, and continuously share the benefits of the gospel, our passion. Transforming lives, have working relationships, growing teams, expanding strategies, advancing church. Do you want to be a part? It's a mission that is possible.